Okay, Hare Krishna, welcome everyone. Hari Bol. Welcome to today's reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's Thursday, 19th of September. ISKCON Dublin, Mela Street, in the city center. We're reading here every Thursday, also every Wednesday, every Friday. And feel free to welcome to join us here or online if you can make it. So we are continuing where we left off yesterday. We are at Canto 3. We're having a few more chapters at this canto. And this chapter is entitled Understanding Material Nature, where Kapiladev is talking to his mother Devahuti. And Devahuti is asking questions. So, but before that, as always, we recite the verses of glorification. Sarva Shastra Vipiyusha, Sarva Vedaika Satpalam, Sarva Siddhantna Ratnadya, Sarva Lokaika Drikpradam, Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu, Kalidvanto Ditaditya, Shri Krishna Parivartita, Paramananda Patnaya, Prema Vakshaksharayate, Sarvanda Sarvasevyaya, Shri Krishna Namostume, Madhika Bando Matsangin, Madgoro Matmahadana, Madnishtaraka Madbhagya, Madananda Namostate, Asadu sadutadayin atini chochataraka hanamuncha kadachinmam prenahrit kantayos puram. Translation. O nectar from the ocean of all scripture, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all of the worlds. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Shri Krishna. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So we're continuing reading. Canto 3, Chapter 27, Text 22. Translation. And it's Lord Krishna as Kapiladev speaking. This devotional service has to be performed strongly in perfect knowledge and with transcendental vision. One must be strongly renounced and must engage in austerity and perform mystic yoga in order to be firmly fixed in self-absorption. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Devotional service in Krishna consciousness cannot be performed blindly due to material emotion or mental concoction. It is specifically mentioned here that one has to perform devotional service in full knowledge by visualizing the absolute truth. We can understand about the absolute truth by evolving transcendental knowledge, and the result of such transcendental knowledge will be manifested by renunciation. That renunciation is not temporary or artificial, but is very strong. It is said that development of Krishna consciousness is exhibited by proportionate material detachment or vairagya. If one does not separate himself from material enjoyment, it is to be understood that he is not advancing in Krishna consciousness. Renunciation in Krishna consciousness is so strong that it cannot be deviated by any attractive illusion. One has to perform devotional service in full tapasya, austerity. One should fast on 2 Ekadashi days, which fall on the 11th day of the waxing and waning moon, and on the birthdays of Lord Krishna, Lord Rama, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There are many such fasting days. Yogena means by controlling the senses and mind. Yoga Indriya Samyamaha. Yogena implies that one is seriously absorbed in the self and is able, by development of knowledge, to understand his constitutional position in relationship with the super self. In this way, one becomes fixed in devotional service, and his faith cannot be shaken by any material allurement. 23. The influence of material nature has covered the living entity, and thus it is as if the living entity were always in a blazing fire, but by the process of seriously discharging devotional service. This influence can be removed, just as wooden sticks which cause a fire are themselves consumed by it. Purport. Fire is conserved in wooden sticks, and when circumstances are favorable, the fire is ignited. But the wooden sticks, which are the cause of the fire, are also consumed by the fire, if it is properly dealt with. Similarly, the living entity's conditional life of material existence is due to his desire to lord it over material nature, and due to his envy of the Supreme Lord. And thus, his main diseases are that he wants to be one with the Supreme Lord, or he wants to become the Lord of material nature. The karmis try to utilize the resources of material nature and thus become its lord and enjoy sense gratification. And the jnanis, the salvationists, who have become frustrated in enjoying the material resources, want to become one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead or merge into the impersonal effulgence. These two diseases are due to material contamination. Material contamination can be consumed by devotional service because in devotional service these two diseases, namely the desire to lord it over material nature and the desire to become one with the Supreme Lord, are absent. Therefore, the cause of material existence is at once consumed by the careful discharge of devotional service in Krishna consciousness. A devotee in full Krishna consciousness appears superficially to be a great karmi, always working, but the inner significance of the devotee's activities is that they are meant for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. This is called bhakti or devotional service. Arjuna was apparently a fighter, but when by his fighting he satisfied the senses of Lord Krishna, he became a devotee. Since a devotee also engages in philosophical research to understand the Supreme Person as he is, his activities may thus appear to be like those of a mental speculator. But actually he is trying to understand the spiritual nature and transcendental activities. Thus, although the tendency for philosophical speculation exists, the material effects of fruitive activities and empiric speculation do not, because this activity is meant for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 24. By discovering the faultiness of his desiring to lord it over material nature and by therefore giving it up, the living entity becomes independent and stands in his own glory. Stands in his own glory. Purport. Because the living entity is not actually the enjoyer of the material resources, his attempt to lord it over material nature is, at the ultimate issue, frustrated. As a result of frustration, he desires more power than the ordinary living entity and thus wants to merge into the existence of the Supreme Enjoyer. In this way, he develops a plan for greater enjoyment. When one is actually situated in devotional service, that is his independent position. Less intelligent men cannot understand the position of the eternal servant of the Lord. Because the word servant is used, they become confused. They cannot understand that this servitude is not the servitude of this material world. To be the servant of the Lord is the greatest position. If one can understand this and can thus revive one's original nature of eternal servitorship of the Lord, one stands fully independent. A living entity's independence is lost by material contact. In the spiritual field, he has full independence, and therefore there is no question of becoming dependent upon the three modes of material nature. This position is attained by a devotee, and therefore he gives up the tendency for material enjoyment after seeing its faultiness. The difference between a devotee and an impersonalist is that an impersonalist tries to become one with the Supreme so that he can enjoy without impediment, whereas a devotee gives up the entire mentality of enjoying and engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. That is his constitutional glorified position. At that time, he is Ishvara, fully independent. The real Ishvara, or Ishvara Parama, the Supreme Ishvara, or Supreme Independent, is Krishna. The living entity is Ishvara only when engaged in the service of the Lord. In other words, transcendental pleasure derived from loving service to the Lord is actual independence. Okay. So yeah, that's the actual independence. That's verse 25. In the dreaming state, one's consciousness is almost covered, and one sees many inauspicious things. But when he is awakened and fully conscious, such inauspicious things cannot bewilder him. Purport. In the condition of dreaming, when one's consciousness is almost covered, one may see many unfavorable things which cause disturbance or anxiety, but upon awakening, although he remembers what happened in the dream, he is not disturbed. You ever had nightmares? Yeah, we all had nightmares. Similarly, the position of self-realization or understanding of one's real relationship with the Supreme Lord makes one completely satisfied, and the three modes of material nature, which are the cause of all disturbances, cannot affect him. In contaminated consciousness, one sees everything to be for his own enjoyment, but in pure consciousness, or Krishna consciousness, he sees that everything exists for the enjoyment of the Supreme Enjoyer. That is the difference between the dream state and wakefulness. The state of contaminated consciousness is compared to dream consciousness, and Krishna consciousness is compared to the awakened stage of life. Actually, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, the only absolute enjoyer is Krishna. One who can understand that Krishna is the proprietor of all the three worlds and that he is the friend of everyone, is peaceful and independent. As long as a conditioned soul does not have this knowledge, he wants to be the enjoyer of everything. He wants to become a humanitarian or philanthropist and open hospitals and schools for his fellow human beings. This is all illusion, for one cannot benefit anyone by such material activities. If one wishes to benefit his fellow brother, he must awaken his dormant Krishna consciousness. The Krishna conscious position is that of Prati Buddha, which means pure consciousness. Prati Buddha. These verses are really packed with gems. Text 26. The influence of material nature cannot harm an enlightened soul, even though he engages in material activities, because he knows the truth of the Absolute, and his mind is fixed on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. Lord Kapila says that Mai Manasam, a devotee whose mind is always fixed upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is called Atmarama, or Vidita Tattva. Atmarama means one who rejoices in the self, or one who enjoys in the spiritual atmosphere. Atma, in the material sense, means the body or the mind, but when referring to one whose mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, Atmarama means one who is fixed in spiritual activities in relationship with the Supreme Soul. The Supreme Soul is the personality of Godhead, and the individual soul is the living entity. When they engage in reciprocation of service and benediction, the living entity is said to be in the Atmarama position. This Atmarama position can be attained by one who knows the truth as it is. The truth is that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the enjoyer, and that the living entities are meant for his service and enjoyment. One who knows this truth and who tries to engage all resources in the service of the Lord escapes all material reactions and influences of the modes of material nature. Escapes. See? That kind of indicates you are somewhere almost like imprisoned. You have to escape, which is, it is compared, this way of living material in Maya, in illusion, it's compared to the prison house. So immediately, for me, this was now kind of a connection. Here it's the word Prabhupada says. You escape all of that by knowing this truth and engaging in this everything in the service of the Lord. That means getting out. Next paragraph. An example may be cited in this connection. Just as a materialist engages in constructing a big skyscraper, a devotee engages in constructing a big temple for Vishnu. Superficially, the skyscraper constructor and temple constructor are on the same level, for both are collecting wood, stone, iron, and other building materials. But the person who constructs a skyscraper is a materialist, and the person who constructs a temple of Vishnu is Atmarama. The materialist tries to satisfy himself in relation to his body by constructing a skyscraper, but the devotee tries to satisfy the Super-Self, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by constructing a temple. Although both are engaged in the association of material activities, the devotee is liberated and the materialist is conditioned. This is because the devotee who is constructing the temple has fixed his mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but the non-devotee who is constructing the skyscraper has his mind fixed in sense gratification. Yeah, I see so many construction going on when this side of the town. So many cranes. There's like 20, 30 cranes. So it's all indicating the sense, enjoyment, and mode of passion. If, while performing any activity, even in material existence, one's mind is fixed upon the lotus feet of the Personality of Godhead, one will not be entangled or conditioned. The worker in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness is always independent of the influence of material nature. Next, it's 27. When a person thus engages in devotional service and self-realization for many, many years and births, he becomes completely reluctant to enjoy any one of the material planets, even up to the highest planet, which is known as Brahmaloka. He becomes fully developed in consciousness. Purport. Anyone engaged in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is known as a devotee, but there is a distinction between pure devotees and mixed devotees. A mixed devotee engages in devotional service for the spiritual benefit of being eternally engaged in the transcendental abode of the Lord in full bliss and knowledge. In material existence, when a devotee is not completely purified, he expects material benefit from the Lord in the form of relief from material miseries, or he wants material gain, advancement in knowledge of the relationship between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity, or knowledge as to the real nature of the Supreme Lord. When a person is transcendental to these conditions, he is called a pure devotee. He does not engage himself in the service of the Lord for any material benefit or for understanding of the Supreme Lord. His one interest is that he loves the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he spontaneously engages in satisfying him. The highest example of pure devotional service is that of the gopis in Vrindavan. They are not interested in understanding Krishna, but only in loving him. That platform of love is the pure state of devotional service. Unless one is advanced to this pure state of devotional service, there is a tendency to desire elevation to higher material position. A mixed devotee may desire to enjoy a comfortable life on another planet with a greater span of life, such as on Brahmaloka. These are material desires. But because a mixed devotee engages in the service of the Lord, ultimately, after many, many lives of material enjoyment, he undoubtedly develops Krishna consciousness. And the symptom of this Krishna consciousness is that he is no longer interested in any sort of materially elevated life. He does not even aspire to become a personality like Lord Brahma. Now we have text 28 and 29, double verse of today, and it goes like that. My devotee actually becomes self-realized by my unlimited causeless mercy, and thus when freed from all doubts, he steadily progresses towards his destined abode, which is directly under the protection of my spiritual energy of unadulterated bliss. That is the ultimate perfectional goal of the living entity. After giving up the present material body, The mystic devotee goes to that transcendental abode and never comes back. When does that happen? When?
Give up material desire.
Yeah. And he is freed from all doubts.
Free from all doubts.
It's also there. It means like there's all knowledge. It's dawned upon the person. Purport. Actual self-realization means becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. The existence of a devotee implies the function of devotion and the object of devotion. Self-realization ultimately means to understand the personality of Godhead and the living entities, to know the individual self and the reciprocal exchanges of loving service between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity is real self-realization. This cannot be attained by the impersonalists or other transcendentalists. They cannot understand the science of devotional service. Devotional service is revealed to the pure devotee by the unlimited causeless mercy of the Lord. This is especially spoken of here by the Lord, Mat Prasadena, by my special grace. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Only those who engage in devotional service with love and faith receive the necessary intelligence from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so that gradually and progressively they can advance to the abode of the Personality of Godhead. Nishreyasa means the ultimate destination. Sva Samstana indicates that the impersonalists have no particular place to stay. The impersonalists sacrifice their individuality so that the living spark can merge into the impersonal effulgence emanating from the transcendental body of the Lord. But the devotee has a specific abode. The planets rest in the sunshine, but the sunshine itself has no particular resting place. When one reaches a particular planet, then he has a resting place. The spiritual sky, which is known as Kaivalya, is simply blissful light on all sides, and it is under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 14.27, Brahmano hi pratishtaham. The impersonal Brahman effulgence rests on the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, the bodily effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Kaivalya, or impersonal Brahman. In that impersonal effulgence, there are spiritual planets, which are known as Vaikunthas, chief of which is Krishna Loka. Some devotees are elevated to the Vaikuntha planets, and some are elevated to the planet Krishna Loka. According to the desire of the particular devotee, he is offered a particular abode, which is known as Sva Samstana, his desired destination. By the grace of the Lord, the self-realized devotee engaged in devotional service, understands his destination even while in the material body. He therefore performs his devotional activities steadily, without doubting. And after quitting his material body, he at once reaches the destination for which he has prepared himself. After reaching that abode, he never comes back to this material world. The words lingat vinirgame, which are used here, mean after being freed from the two kinds of material bodies, subtle and gross. The subtle body is made of mind intelligence, false ego, and contaminated consciousness, and the gross body is made of 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. When one is transferred to the spiritual world, he gives up both the subtle and gross bodies of this material world. He enters the spiritual sky in his pure spiritual body and is stationed in one of the spiritual planets. Although the impersonalists also reach that spiritual sky after giving up the subtle and gross material bodies, they are not placed in the spiritual planets. As they desire, they are allowed to merge in the spiritual effulgence emanating from the transcendental body of the Lord. The word Sva Samstanam is also very significant. As a living entity prepares himself, so he attains his abode. The impersonal and Brahman effulgence is offered to the impersonalist, but those who want to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his transcendental form as Narayana in the Vaikunthas, or with Krishna in Krishna Loka, go to those abodes wherefrom they never return. It means it's really great there. Not that you are not that you cannot return in a way. That verse 30. When a perfect yogi's attention is no longer attracted to the byproducts of mystic powers, which are manifestations of the external energy, his progress towards me becomes unlimited, and thus the power of death cannot overcome him. Purport. Yogis are generally attracted to the byproducts of mystic yogic power, for they can become smaller than the smallest or greater than the greatest, achieve anything they desire, have power even to create a planet, or bring anyone they like under their subjection. Yogis who have incomplete information of the result of devotional service are attracted by these powers, but these powers are material. They have nothing to do with spiritual progress. As other material powers are created by the material energy, mystic yogic powers are also material. A perfect yogi's mind is not attracted by any material power, but is simply attracted by unalloyed service to the Supreme Lord. For a devotee, the process of merging into the Brahman effulgence is considered to be hellish, and yogic power, or the preliminary perfection of yogic power to be able to control the senses, is automatically achieved. As for elevation to higher planets, a devotee considers this to be simply hallucinatory. A devotee's attention is concentrated only upon the eternal loving service of the Lord, and therefore the power of death has no influence over him. In such a devotional state, a perfect yogi can attain the status of immortal knowledge and bliss. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 3rd canto, 27th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Understanding Material Nature. There's one of the powers that yogis have, those who would be devotee yogis, or devotees who would have the yogic ability, or the pure devotee would have all the yogic powers. Right? They would be able to leave the body as they want, as they like. They would leave, and it would go directly through, through the exact place where the soul supposed to go out, because you can go through any of the openings, but that's where they're supposed to go. Somewhere here, go out. So we end this chapter, and we're continuing at chapter 28. Continuing chapter 28, chapter 8 is entitled Kapila's Instructions on the Execution of Devotional Service. We have text 1. The Personality of Godhead said, "My dear mother, O daughter of the king, now I shall explain to you the system of yoga, the object of which is to concentrate the mind. By practicing this system, one can become joyful and progressively advance towards the path of the absolute truth." Purport. The yoga process explained by Lord Kapiladev in this chapter is authorized and standard, and therefore these instructions should be followed very carefully. To begin, the Lord says that by yoga practice one can make progress towards understanding the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the previous chapter, it has been clearly stated that the desired result of yoga is not to achieve some wonderful mystic power. One should not be at all attracted by such mystic power, but should attain progressive realization on the path of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, which states in the last verse of the 6th chapter that the greatest yogi is he who constantly thinks of Krishna within himself, or he who is Krishna conscious. It is stated here that by following the system of yoga, one can become joyful. Lord Kapila, the Personality of Godhead, who is the highest authority on yoga, here explains the yoga system known as Ashtanga Yoga, which comprises 8 different practices, namely Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. By all these stages of practice, one must realize Lord Vishnu, who is the target of all yoga. There are so-called yoga practices in which one concentrates the mind on voidness or on the impersonal. But this is not approved by the authorized yoga system as explained by Kapiladev. Even Patanjali explains that the target of all yoga is Vishnu. Ashtanga yoga is therefore part of Vaishnava practice because its ultimate goal is realization of Vishnu. The achievement of success in yoga is not acquisition of mystic power, which is condemned in the previous chapter, but rather freedom from all material designations and situation in one's constitutional position. That is the ultimate achievement in yoga practice. Text 2. One should execute his prescribed duties to the best of his ability and avoid performing duties not allotted to him. One should be satisfied with as much gain as he achieves by the grace of the Lord, and one should worship the lotus feet of a spiritual master. Purport. In this verse there are many important words which could be very elaborately explained, but we shall briefly discuss the important aspects of each. The final statement is Atmavik Charanar Chanam. Atmavit means a self-realized soul or bona fide spiritual master. Unless one is self-realized and knows that what his relationship with the super soul is, he cannot be a bona fide spiritual master. Here it is recommended that one should seek out a bona fide spiritual master and surrender unto him Archanam, for by inquiring from and worshipping him one can learn spiritual activities. The first recommendation is Sva Dharmacharanam. As long as we have this material body, there are various duties prescribed for us. Such duties are divided by a system of 4 social orders, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. These particular duties are mentioned in the Shastra, and particularly in Bhagavad Gita. Swadharma Charanam means that one must discharge the prescribed duties of his particular division of society faithfully and to the best of his ability. One should not accept another's duty. If one is born in a particular society or community, he should perform the prescribed duties for that particular division. If, however, one is fortunate enough to transcend the designation of birth in a particular society or community by being elevated to the standard of spiritual identity, then his swadharma or duty is solely that of service the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The actual duty of one who is advanced in Krishna consciousness is to serve the Lord. As long as one remains in the bodily concept of life, he may act according to the duties of social convention. But if one is elevated to a spiritual platform, he must simply serve the Supreme Lord. That is the real execution of Swadharma. Yeah, text 3. Someone's really happy. One should cease performing conventional religious practices and should be attracted to those which lead to salvation. One should eat very frugally, and should always remain secluded so that he can achieve the highest perfection of life. Maybe we don't do this so much. Eat frugally.
Eat what you need, nothing more than what you need.
Yeah, you don't know. I'm just saying that we do sometimes feasts and all that. But that's another part which is also it's not condemned. It's nice to eat prasadam. But basically, you should eat frugally and have festival to eat sumptuously. Purport. It is recommended herein that religious practice for economic development or the satisfaction of sense desire should be avoided. Religious practices should be executed only to gain freedom from the clutches of material nature. It is stated in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam that the topmost religious practice is that by which one can attain to the transcendental devotional service of the Lord without reason or cause. Such religious practice is never hampered by any impediments, and by its performance one actually becomes satisfied. Here this is recommended as moksha dharma, religious practice for salvation or transcendence of the clutches of material contamination. Generally, people execute religious practices for economic development or sense gratification, but that is not recommended for one who wants to advance in yoga. The next important phase is mita medhyadanam, which means that one should eat very frugally. Okay, it is recommended in the Vedic literatures that a yogi eat only half what he desires according to his hunger.
It says in what is it? Nectar of Instruction?
Yeah.
What's the verse?
The verse?
About eating.
Eat-
Someone should
Eat to your...
shouldn't eat more than necessary, or eat less than necessary. And one shouldn't sleep
Yeah.
more than necessary.
You be balanced in your eating. Oh, that's also in Gita, right? One should be balanced in eating, sleeping, and recreation.
Mm.
Yeah, in I think it's beginning first or second verse of Nectar of Instruction, right? Or it doesn't say like half. Here it says half. But then Prabhupada would say half food and 25% water and 25% air, right? So it'd be kind of the same, right? Half of your...
Basically, don't overdo it.
Yeah. If you kind of like, I'm full, that means you overate. You kind of feel the pressure, or you... So you just...
Don't pressure after eating.
Yeah.
But I think as you get older, you just naturally have to do that.
You're not attracted to all that.
Yeah, you can't. You just physically can't eat.
The more,
Like a huge amount of food.
the more you put in, the more problems you'll get later.
More problems you got, the more sleep you have to have.
Mostly, more disturbance, more diseases can
more disease
come with the proper eating. With what you put in, the amount as well, and the time also it's there. A good time, all the time how you eat, in what consciousness we eat, all the subtle things as well. So it's should never be disturbed.
Chaitanya Charitamrita last night, and Sri Prabhupada said that the disturbances, the air in the body, the 5 airs in the body are not working properly or disturbed. People go crazy in the mind.
Yeah.
It affects the mind.
Yeah, somewhere it was something similar. We were also reading through the similar. It was mentioned maybe just a chapter back or 2 chapters back here with Kapiladev. It's also mentioned about the airs in the body, because he explains all the whole gamut of material and how things work. So again, I think it's mentioned the same thing about going crazy.
So if you have a lot of mucus, then there's something wrong.
And then the Ayurveda comes in. Can work together with how the science of Ayurveda or knowledge of prolonged life.
Yes.
Hey!
Eat on air.
Eat air and sunshine. So, sorry, yeah? Oh, yeah, okay. It is, if one is so hungry that he could devour 1 pound of foodstuffs, that instead of eating 1 pound, he should consume only half a pound, and supplement this with 4 ounces of water. 1/4 of the stomach should be left empty for passage of air in the stomach. If one eats in this manner, he will avoid indigestion and disease. The yogi should eat in this way, as recommended in the Srimad Bhagavatam and all other standard scriptures. The yogi should live in a secluded place where his yoga practice will not be disturbed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's easier said than done.
Secluded place? Well, you can have your own place as
Where's he gone?
secluded.
Krishna? Come.
Pujari work. John, would you like?
Yeah.
For
it's been a while since I was
you're
sat here and read.
15 minutes, 16, 17 minutes. Say hi.
Hi. Is anyone listening? Anyone on the other end? Anybody there? Hare Krishna. Yeah, I'm going to have to hunch down. Hunch! Push me, you want to read out or something? On the phone or?
No, I'm listening, don't worry, I have to watch my whistle.
We have one more.
You want to read too, mister? Hare Krishna. So, okay. It's number 4, yes. Translation. One should practice non-violence and truthfulness. Should avoid thieving and be satisfied with possessing as much as he needs for his maintenance. He should abstain from sex life, perform austerity, be clean, study the Vedas, and worship the supreme form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. The word Purusharchanam in this verse means worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, especially the form of Lord Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, it is confirmed by Arjuna that Krishna is the original Purusha, or personality of Godhead. Purusham Shashvatam. Therefore, in yoga practice, one not only must concentrate his mind on the person of Krishna, but must also worship the form or deity of Krishna daily. A brahmachari practices celibacy, controlling his sex life. One cannot enjoy unrestricted sex life and practice yoga. This is rascaldom. So-called yogis advertise that one can go on enjoying as one likes and simultaneously become a yogi, but this is totally unauthorized. It's very clearly explained here that one must observe celibacy. Brahmacharyam means that one leads his life simply in relationship with Brahman, or in full Krishna consciousness. Those who are too addicted to sex life cannot observe the regulations which will lead them to Krishna consciousness. Sex life should be restricted to persons who are married. A person whose sex life is restricted in marriage is also called a brahmachari. The word asteyam is also very important for a yogi. Asteyam means to refrain from theft. In the broader sense, everyone who accumulates more than he needs is a thief. Okay? They're all thieves. All you rich people out there, thieves.
Not here, but out there.
Yeah. Just call me a thief.
Yeah, you earn more than you need. Give it to us, people who need it. Those people there. According to spiritual communism, one cannot possess more than he needs for his personal maintenance. That is the law of nature. Anyone who accumulates more money or more possessions than he needs is called a thief. And one who simply accumulates wealth without spending for sacrifice or for worship of the personality of Godhead is a great thief. Mahadif, yeah. Now there you go. That's it. Svadhyaya means reading the authorized Vedic scriptures. Even if one is not Krishna conscious and is practicing the yoga system, he must read standard Vedic literatures in order to understand. Performance of yoga alone is not sufficient. Narottam Das Thakur, a great devotee and acharya in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, says that all spiritual activities should be understood from the 3 sources, namely saintly persons, standard scriptures, and the spiritual master. Where was I now? These 3 guides are very important for progress in spiritual life. The spiritual master prescribes standard literature for the prosecution of the yoga of devotional service, and he himself speaks only from scriptural reference.
Therefore, reading standard scriptures is necessary for executing yoga. Practicing yoga without reading the standard literatures is simply a waste of time. So read everybody, it's very important. That's why we do this every week. Well, at least Prabhu does it every week. Number 5. One must observe silence, acquire steadiness by practicing different yogic postures, control the breathing of the vital air, withdraw the senses from sense objects, and thus concentrate the mind on the heart. Oh, this is like the yogic practice, is it? Mm-hmm. He's describing here. So maybe something like that, yeah. Hatha yoga. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The yogic practices in general and Hatha yoga in particular are not ends in themselves. They are means to the end of attaining steadiness. First, one must be able to sit properly, and then the mind and attention will become steady enough for practicing yoga. Gradually, one must control the circulation of vital air, and with such control, he will be able to withdraw the senses from sense objects. In the previous verse, it is stated that one must observe celibacy. The most important aspect of sense control is controlling sex life. This is called brahmacharya. By practicing the different sitting postures and controlling the vital air, one can control and restrain the senses from unrestricted sense enjoyment. It'd be good to be able to do that while you're chanting, huh? Just sit up straight and Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare. But then you're like, oh God, you can feel all the pain and the legs getting numb after a while. It's like, oh, I got to stretch here and I got to stretch there. Jai.
He wants to give lecture.
When you can talk, you can give lecture, no problem.
Soon have enough opportunities.
Oh yeah.
You will have plenty of
Text number 6. Fixing the vital air and the mind in one of the 6 circles of vital air circulation within the body, thus concentrating one's mind on the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is called samadhi, or samadhan of the mind. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. There are 6 circles of vital air circulation. There are 6 circles of vital air circulation within the body. The first circle is within the belly. The second circle is in the area of the heart. The third is in the area of the lungs. The fourth is on the palate. The fifth is between the eyebrows, and the highest, the 6th circle, is above the brain. One has to fix his mind and the circulation of vital air, and thus think of the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Lord. It is never mentioned that one should concentrate on the impersonal or void. It is clearly stated by Kunta Lila. Lila means pastimes. Unless the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, has, did I say that? Oh yeah. The personality of Godhead has transcendental pastimes, where is the scope for thinking of these pastimes? It is through the process of devotional service, chanting and hearing of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that one can achieve this concentration. As described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Lord appears and disappears according to his relationships with different devotees. The Vedic literatures contain many narrations of the Lord's pastimes, including the Battle of Kurukshetra, and historical facts relating to the life and precepts of devotees like Prahalad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, and Ambarish Maharaj. One need only concentrate his mind on one such narration and become always absorbed in its thought. Then he will be in samadhi. Samadhi is not an artificial bodily state. It is a state achieved when the mind is virtually absorbed in thoughts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, should we know what problem it is now? You know what to do. Samadhi. Number 7. By these processes, or any other true process, one must control the contaminated, unbridled mind, which is always attracted by material enjoyment, and thus fix himself in thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Iter Anyascha. The general yoga process entails observing the rules and regulations, practicing the different sitting postures, concentrating the mind on the vital circulation of the air, and then thinking of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his Vaikuntha pastimes. This is the general process of yoga. This same concentration can be achieved by other recommended processes, and therefore Anyascha, other methods also can be applied. The essential point is that the mind, which is contaminated by material attraction, has to be bridled and concentrated on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It cannot be fixed on something void or impersonal. For this reason, so-called yoga practices of voidism and impersonalism are not recommended in any standard yoga shastra. The real yogi is the devotee, because his mind is always concentrated on the pastimes of Lord Krishna. Therefore, Krishna consciousness is the topmost yoga system. Number 8. After controlling one's mind and sitting postures, one should spread a seat in a secluded and sanctified place. Sit there in an easy posture, keeping the body erect, and practice breath control. Anita. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Sitting in an easy posture is called Svasti Samasinaha. It is recommended in the yoga scripture that one should put the soles of the feet between the two thighs and ankles and sit straight. That posture will help one to concentrate his mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This very process is always recommended in Bhagavad Gita. Huh?
Lotus posture. Yeah, that's half lotus. Half lotus, yeah. And then if you pull it in there, that's full.
That's the lotus, right? Lotus posture.
That is.
Not easy. Maybe this one would be easier. There you go. The soles are between the two thighs.
Exactly what it says. The thighs are here.
Okay, it's not exactly wrong. Where was it? This very process is also recommended in Bhagavad Gita, 6th chapter. It is further suggested that one sit in a secluded, sanctified spot. The seat should consist of deerskin and kusha grass topped with cotton. Yeah. Yeah, where do you get deerskin? Like, I mean, it's not even go around killing deer, you know.
There, Phoenix Park.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Deer.
Hunt down the deer.
Go hunting deer, you know.
Kushagrass had to order online.
Online.
Well, they do. I know they do some culling up there.
Just Amazon.uk.
Deerskin. Small. Just
Ask the park rangers, when the next time you go culling, can you please give me some deerskin?
what would they do with this skin when they have that?
I don't know what to do with it. Eat them maybe.
Like shoes.
Number 9. The yogi should clear the passage of vital air by breathing in the following manner. First, he should inhale very deeply, then hold the breath in, and finally exhale. Or, reversing the process, the yogi can first exhale, then hold the breath outside, and finally inhale. This is done so that the mind may become steady and free from external disturbances. It does work. Sometimes when I do that, it helps to calm the mind a bit. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. These breathing exercises are performed to control the mind and fix it on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Savaimana Krishna Padaravindayo. The devotee Ambarish Maharaj fixed his mind on the lotus feet of the Krishna 24 hours a day. The process of Krishna consciousness is to chant Hare Krishna and to hear the sound attentively so that the mind is fixed upon the transcendental vibration of Krishna's name, which is non-different from Krishna, the personality. The real purpose of controlling the mind by the prescribed method of clearing the passage of the life air is achieved immediately if one fixes his mind directly on the lotus feet of Krishna. The Hatha Yoga system or breathing system is especially recommended for those who are very absorbed in the concept of bodily existence, but one who can perform the simple process of chanting Hare Krishna can fix the mind more easily. 3 different activities are recommended for clearing the passage of breath: Puraka, Kumbhaka, and Rekaka. Rechaka. Inhaling the breath is called Puraka, sustaining it within is called Kumbhaka, and finally exhaling is called Rechaka. These recommended processes can also be performed in the reverse order. After exhaling, one can keep the air outside for some time and then inhale. The nerves through which inhalation and exhalation are conducted are technically called Ida and Pingala. The ultimate purpose of clearing the Ida and Pingala passages is to divert the mind from the material enjoyment. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, one's mind is his enemy and one's mind is also his friend. Its position varies according to the different dealings of the living entity. If we divert our mind to thoughts of material enjoyment, then our mind becomes an enemy. And if we concentrate our mind on the lotus feet of Krishna, then our mind is a friend. By the yoga system of Puraka, Kumbhaka, and Rechaka, or by directly fixing the mind on the sound vibration of Krishna or on the form of Krishna, the same purpose is achieved. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that one must practice the breathing exercise. Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena, Bhagavad Gita 8.8. By virtue of these processes of control, the mind cannot wander to external thoughts. Cetasa Nanya Gamina. Thus one can fix his mind constantly on the Supreme Personality of Godhead and can attain Him. Yati. Practicing the yoga system of exercise and breath control is very difficult for a person in this age, and therefore Lord Chaitanya recommended Kirtanya Sadahari. One should always chant the holy name of the Supreme Lord Krishna, because Krishna is the most suitable name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The name Krishna and the Supreme Person, Krishna, are non-different. Therefore, if one concentrates his mind on hearing and chanting Hare Krishna, the same result is achieved. Hare Krishna. Okay, that's it. We have come to an end for today. Thank you for coming and listening in. Now we have things to do. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Tomorrow, 6:30. Is it? Maybe.
Thank you.